A citizen-led petition calling for Alberta to seek independence from Canada is gaining momentum across the province.
Alberta needs to be strong and free from the shackles of the Liberal government. We are tired. We don't matter in this relationship, and it has to stop. I think we've had enough.
Been an abusive relationship for so long, really. I think most of us just want out.
Everybody's fed up. We're done with it.
Tens of thousands of Albertans are lining up in the freezing cold for a chance to vote their province out of the country.
Alberta just officially made a massive exit announcement that put Canada on edge. Alberta just detonated a political explosion that sent shockwaves through Canada. A full-blown exit move that tears the illusion of national unity wide open. Ottawa is staring at freezing crowds stretching for blocks, realizing this referendum push carries the kind of fury that fractures countries and reshapes borders. And as Alberta pulls its power back, locks its wealth inside its own walls, and marches toward a future built on its own terms, the rest of Canada feels the ground cracking beneath it.
There were people constantly streaming in to sign up for separation.
It hasn't been going very well in Canada for the past however long, and we have young children, and we hope to give them a better future if we can make some changes in this province. And if that means separating, then so be it.
Alberta has crossed a threshold governments prayed would stay buried forever. This has moved past talk, speculation, and online fury. This is an officially sanctioned political process with legal force behind it. Mass turnout on the streets and a 120-day countdown ending with signatures on paper and a referendum staring Canada straight in the face.
The Stay Free Alberta campaign is collecting signatures for the chance to vote on the question: do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada to become an independent state? That's the question that they're hoping for. The push comes as new polling suggests support for Alberta sovereignty is on the rise.
Elections Alberta approved the process on January 3rd, 2026, launching a petition drive demanding 177,732 verified signatures by May 2nd to trigger a full independence vote. What elites once waved away as fringe noise has transformed into a disciplined operation with hard deadlines, roaming canvassers, and winter lines curling around entire city blocks.
The Stay Free Alberta campaign needs nearly 178,000 signatures by May 2nd to be successful.
The moment this stopped being theoretical was when people started standing outside in freezing temperatures for hours. Red Deer saw hundreds queue for over 3 hours in what organizers are calling the longest petition line in provincial history.
The response has been strong. Not even standing room available inside the hall at this community center, and the lineup to get in stretching down the block.
Edmonton, the provincial capital and supposed Liberal stronghold, had lines even bigger. Walking the length of the crowd at Rundle Park took 2.5 minutes without reaching the front. Calgary had overflow so severe people were told to come back the next day. Then Eckville, a tiny rural community, drew 1,800 people to a single independence event. This is not one city having a moment. This is simultaneous mass turnout across urban centers and small towns at the same time. All documented, all verified, all feeding into a legally binding process. The petition is not a Facebook poll. It is governed by Elections Alberta with strict verification requirements. Only registered canvassers can collect signatures. Every signature must be witnessed in person. ID eligibility must be checked on the spot. And the canvasser must sign each sheet as well.
Yeah, Jefferson, events were held in central and southern Alberta, including in Edmonton and Okotoks. Stay Free Alberta, the group heading the petition, has been hosting canvassing events across the province since Elections Alberta gave them the green light in early January.
This creates a paper trail that cannot be dismissed as bots, clickbait, or social media manipulation. The process was designed to guarantee legitimacy, which is exactly why opponents cannot simply wave it away. When someone waits 90 minutes in January cold to put their name on a legal document, that is not casual participation. That is conviction with consequences. Organizers are not aiming for the minimum. They want overwhelming numbers that make this impossible to ignore. Red Deer alone reportedly collected 5,000 signatures in a single weekend.
We have to work even harder because we're too busy paying all of our taxes out east, and we get nothing back in return. And the people here have to work extremely hard to pay their rent, to pay their gas bills, to buy their food, and I think enough is enough.
Individual signing events across the province are drawing between 1,700 and 4,000 people per night. Stay Free Alberta, the group leading the petition, claims they had 250,000 people pre-registered before official collection even started.
If this succeeds, it could go to a referendum or be discussed in the Legislative Assembly. At minimum, it will definitely send a message to the residents of Alberta and the government. And if it doesn't,
Maybe I'll leave Canada. I'm not like.
Oh, you're considering it?
Considering it, yeah.
They have deployed over 2,000 trained canvassers and are tracking internal signature counts that leadership refuses to release publicly, except to say they are ahead of schedule. The stated goal is not 177,000. It is well over 1 million signatures within 120 days, a number designed to create political gravity that no government can resist.
Your industry is garbage, and if you try to complain, we're going to call you a bunch of hicks and rednecks. Would any Albertan seriously take that offer? And so, you know what? We got the chance for freedom, and I'm going to support freedom.
Feelings of frustration towards Ottawa, one of the reasons why people turning out till Wednesday's petition signing.
Edmonton is where this story changes from regional anger to province-wide movement. Edmonton is NDP territory, provincially and federally, the most liberal major city in Alberta, the place where independence was supposed to hit a wall. Instead, weekend signing events there are producing the biggest lines in the province. When a Rundle Park event opened at 10 a.m., the line 5 minutes later was already massive, snaking through hallways, around corners, past snowbanks, with no end in sight.
The federal government doesn't seem to be interested in working with Alberta, and it's unfortunate. But you know what? We have a choice to make, whether we continue the status quo or we can make a change.
I think I want to see change for my kids. I don't want them to carry all the debt that's going to happen by keeping in what we have right now.
If this level of turnout is happening in Edmonton, the movement is no longer confined to conservative rural anger. It has crossed into the mainstream and penetrated the symbolic firewall. The core grievance fueling this is equalization payments, and it is the simplest and most emotionally powerful complaint in the entire movement. Between 2007 and 2022, Alberta contributed $244 billion more in federal taxes than it received in federal spending, an average net outflow of $16 billion per year.
If you don't take this opportunity, then you'll just go along with what the federal government, you gotta like speak for yourself, This is the power of the people, our voices.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That works out to roughly $3,800 per Albertan annually, subsidizing services in other provinces. Alberta has not received equalization payments since the 1960s. Every person interviewed in petition lines brings this up in their own words. My money stays here. We fund the country and get nothing back. Help our own people first. Then if there's leftovers, help them. This is people doing math on their paychecks and deciding the math no longer works.
If we exceed 1 million signatures, that's going to be one of the strongest messages ever sent to a provincial government anywhere in Canada.
Energy infrastructure is the second pillar of resentment, and it ties directly into economic survival. Alberta holds 170 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, the third largest in the world. The energy sector generated $68 billion in GDP in 2023, accounting for 28% of the provincial economy. Alberta produced 3.7 million barrels per day that year, with 97% of crude exports flowing to the United States. Yet federal reviews, court challenges, and regulatory delays have blocked major export infrastructure for over a decade.
We last asked back in 2023 is a significant rise across the board. Support for independence is up 5 points in Edmonton, it's up 5 points in Calgary, and it's up 11 points in the rest of Alberta.
The federal government purchased the Trans Mountain Pipeline for $4.5 billion in 2018, and its projected cost has since ballooned beyond $30 billion. A textbook example of political interference inflating risk rather than resolving it. For Albertans watching projects die or costs spiral while their livelihoods depend on market access, Ottawa's involvement looks less like governance and more like sabotage. What independence offers is not revenge or nostalgia. It offers leverage. Inside Canada, Alberta is a province that argues, waits, and absorbs decisions made elsewhere.
If we separate, more jobs will open up because the government likes to hold that stuff out.
Seems like we're getting robbed by the East so much that we've got to stand up.
Outside that structure, Alberta becomes an entity negotiating with assets that actually matter. Energy reserves, geography, trade routes, and economic output. Those things do not disappear when independence happens. They suddenly become bargaining chips. And once you hold chips, people stop lecturing you and start listening. This is why the conversation inevitably expands beyond Ottawa and reaches the United States. Once Alberta can act on its own interests, relationships stop being filtered through federal politics and start being driven by reality.
The threshold of signatures needed by nearly half. At that time, Premier Danielle Smith cited separatist sentiment being a big reason for the move. Smith has said she supports a sovereign Alberta.
The 51st state discussion is not a commitment. It is a strategic variable. Independence expands Alberta's options, and the presence of credible alternatives changes how other governments calculate risk, cooperation, and concessions.
Petition proponent Mitch Sylvester says Stay Free Alberta wants to collect more than the 177,000 signatures it needs. He says the goal is getting higher based on the support they're hearing.
Our goal is to make this too big to ignore. So you know what? Based on what's happening right now, that's a definite possibility.
People here say the message resonates with them because of the relationship they say Alberta has with the rest of Canada.
When a jurisdiction demonstrates the capacity to stand on its own, every external relationship is reassessed on new terms. That alone alters negotiations with Ottawa, investors, and international partners, because it signals that Alberta's future is no longer constrained to a single political framework. External alignment becomes a tool rather than a taboo subject, and even talking about it shifts power long before any final decisions are made.
Alberta contributes roughly $4.2 billion annually to federal transfer payments while receiving literally $0 back. And as I understand it, Alberta hasn't received their own share of equalization payments since the 1960s. Meanwhile, Quebec receives literally billions despite having lower tax rates than Alberta.
If Alberta joined the United States, the economic implications would be immediate and severe for both sides. Alberta would gain access to a $27 trillion economy without trade barriers, full representation in Congress with roughly 6 to 8 seats based on population, and integration into U.S. defense infrastructure worth $877 billion annually.
Gang, Canada's going to split apart mere months from now, and it's going to be one of the single biggest political earthquakes in our lifetimes.
Canada, meanwhile, would lose 17% of its GDP overnight. Economic models project the Canadian dollar could drop 15 to 20%. Credit ratings would face downgrades as debt to GDP ratios spike without Alberta's tax base, and eastern provinces would confront an immediate $16 billion annual gap in equalization funding, forcing either sharp spending cuts or major tax increases to fill the hole Alberta currently provides. The demographic factor is what makes this movement different from past separatist surges. Polling shows the highest support for independence is among voters aged 18 to 34, with some surveys placing support near 40% in that cohort.
But what really should terrify Canada's liberal political elite, the highest support for secession is actually among Alberta's youngest voters. Among Albertans aged 18 to 34, support for independence hit 40%.
This is not older voters clinging to nostalgia. This is young people buying into a political project that will shape the next 30 years. Overall support sits at 33% of all Albertans today, up from 25% in 2019. Among decided voters, that figure climbs to 38%. Critically, support jumps to 52% when respondents are asked if they would support independence if it meant keeping equalization payments within the province. That conditional majority is the pivot point, because it shows the movement is not about ideology. It is about economics and control.
They want to leave Canada entirely. This isn't boomers clinging to nostalgia. This is young people who've watched federal climate policies destroy energy jobs, equalization payments, those are basically subsidies to the other provinces.
Independence referendums also mobilize voters who typically sit out elections, which is why turnout in comparable votes has exceeded 85 to 90% in cases like Quebec in 1995 and Scotland in 2014. High turnout changes electoral math and reduces the reliability of traditional polling assumptions. Once a population commits at this scale, movements rarely revert to dormancy. Petition thresholds, signature counts, and fixed timelines convert sentiment into sequence. Even without predicting an outcome, the process itself forces institutional engagement and sustained public focus.
Canada, our large country by landmass, whose neighbor is the United States of America, the largest economy in the world with the most powerful military, who's culturally aligned to us. We speak the same language. We like sports. We largely follow the same religions. We have the same culture and other things that connect us.
Opposition to independence leans heavily on fear scenarios, but most collapse when examined operationally. Landlocked does not mean economically trapped. Alberta already conducts the majority of its trade by value with the United States, and modern trade depends on negotiated access, not territorial contiguity. Globally, landlocked countries such as Switzerland and Austria maintain high living standards through transit agreements, tariff structures, and market access frameworks. Geography creates constraints, but constraints are managed through contracts, not panic.
There sure is. And it's probably something called equalization payments, which you don't have in the United States. But in Canada, equalization payments mean that the richer province essentially pay the bills for the so-called poorer provinces.
Claims of economic retaliation also ignore mutual dependence. British Columbia relies on east-west rail and energy supply chains that pass through Alberta, while central Canada depends on western corridors to reach Pacific markets. Disruption would impose immediate costs on all parties, incentivizing negotiation rather than escalation. Independence does not remove interdependence, it formalizes it. What makes this phase distinct is not just anger, but organization. Stay Free Alberta is led by Mitch Sylvester, whose origin story ties directly into COVID-era government overreach. His store was shut down while Canadian Tire and Walmart stayed open.
With its natural resources, its oil industry. So Alberta is spending billions of dollars of its treasury to support people in Quebec, in Ontario. You think Ontario is not a have province? The industrial sector of the country?
His stated goal is to make the movement too big to ignore, and the strategy is to exceed the minimum threshold by such a margin that dismissal becomes impossible. The group has its own legal team, a network of over 2,000 canvassers, and internal signature tallies they refuse to release except to confirm they are ahead of schedule.
Just because I'm fed up with the government, the federal, right? Mm-hmm. And Smith is on the right track. Good for her. I support her all the way.
There is also growing concern over Alberta's lack of control in critical infrastructure decisions that directly impact provincial economic security. Major pipeline projects have been delayed or blocked by federal processes that prioritize political optics over economic necessity, leaving Alberta's energy sector vulnerable to market volatility and transportation bottlenecks. The province generates the wealth but lacks the authority to move it efficiently, creating a structural dependency that independent supporters argue is unsustainable. This is not just about pipelines. It is about whether a province can secure its own economic future when critical decisions are made by distant bureaucrats with different priorities.
Since the petition was approved at the start of January, its provincial tour has drawn crowds, including these scenes in Red Deer, these in Millet, south of Edmonton, and in Calgary.
The pictures they're showing you is exactly like this. People lined up around the corner, down the road.
Defense and Arctic security have also entered the conversation in ways that strengthen the independence case. Alberta's geographic position and resource base make it strategically valuable, yet the province has no direct say in how national defense priorities are set or funded. With Arctic sovereignty becoming a frontline issue and geopolitical tensions rising, some argue that Alberta's interests would be better served by aligning with a partner that treats northern security as existential rather than symbolic. Independence would not weaken Alberta's security position. It would clarify who holds responsibility for defending it.
As you can see behind me, there are hundreds of people lined up to sign a petition. What's the question? Should Alberta separate from the rest of Canada?
You can see the line. Like, the lines are there everywhere. For every event, doesn't matter, small town, big city, medium city, the lines are there.
If Alberta were to align with the United States, what happens to Canada when it loses its largest energy engine, a major export base, and one of the few provinces that consistently pays more into the system than it takes out? If this breakdown finally exposed what the headlines hide, smash like, hit subscribe, and blast this video everywhere.